3, 2. All right. Hello and welcome everyone to another Chat and Learn here with Power to Fly. My name is Mariella Marie, and as always, super excited to roll into this next hour with you all. I had a chance to speak with our guest speaker behind the scenes, and I'm trying to lure her into coming to Patagonia to just, share her magic down here. So I can't wait to continue connecting with our guest speaker. But I know that she's going to drop a lot of knowledge in this next hour. So I don't want to take up too much time in the introduction. Just want to go over some quick housekeeping rules so that we all feel comfortable and confident in this next hour. I like to remind us that crazy things going on in the world. Seems like, especially now, it's harder to bring our authentic selves into the workplace, into our homes. You could be deciding to do anything with your time now, but you're intentionally spending it with us, whether you're here live with us or whether you're rewatching. So we just want to say thank you for taking time out of your day to learn with us today. With that said, if you're here live, we would love for you to maximize your time by participating. So you can participate in a number of ways. You can turn your cameras on if you feel called to do so. We believe in visibility here at Power to Fly, so we would just love to share that here with our digital community. If not, don't worry, you can make use of the chat box. You can write in the chat box any ideas, any of your own tips and tricks, any part of your story that you'd like to share, any questions that come to mind in the moment. Just feel free to use the chat box so that you can continue to participate there. And I will invite you throughout this session to feel free to hop off mute whenever you feel called to do so. So I might sound like a broken record there, but I want to remind people to try to engage with us. If you do hop off mute, you will be featured in our live recording as this is being recorded. So I just want to remind everyone, if you're joining live, you will get a rewatch email with the link to this recorded chat, as well as links to resources that our guest speaker might bring up throughout the hour. If anyone has any sensitive information and you prefer to be kept anonymous, you can find me in the chat box under Mariella Marie. You can write to me privately and I will flag your question or your reflection to our guest speaker and keep you anonymous. And the last thing I'll say is we'd love for you to follow us on socials and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep up with all the great chats we've got in store. And speaking of all the great chats we've got in store, I am honored to have this digital space to be able to moderate. And as I will be doing for this next hour, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself if this is your first chat where I'm moderating. So I'm originally from California, but I live in Patagonia in Argentina. I love speaking about how we can deepen our emotional intelligence at work and at play. And so if anyone wants to philosophize with me on that note, I'm happy to connect with you on LinkedIn, or you can support the project that I'm working on that is called the Positive Force Team. You can go to thepositiveforceteam.org and sign up for our newsletter if you're interested in supporting the work there. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to pass the mic to our guest speaker, Christine. Let us know a little bit about yourself, how you came to learn about Power to Fly, and what you're excited to share with us today.
Hi, everyone. And just to say, acknowledge Mariella, thank you so much for your energy and just being here with me. And it's great to just share this platform in service of our community and our folks that are really trying to dismantle a system that hasn't thought of us in the first place. So thank you. I am, how did I, I was actually, it was from a LinkedIn connection, and then I was introduced to multiple folks within Power to Fly, and then now we're here. I felt really loved and embraced by Power to Fly's team, to be honest. It's like, oh my God, I feel special. So every single person that I met was just incredible. And I'm grateful to be in community with you all. So thank you for having me here. My name is Christine Carino. I'm the founder and managing partner of Conscious Thrive, and it's a full service DEI consulting. I started this company really with a mission to center the needs of underrepresented, marginalized individuals. And I wanted to expand that and continue doing the work and make sure that all the systems in place, whether it's at work or outside of that, actually is conducive for empowered, marginalized folks to show up true to who they are. Prior to my work, so my coaching practice is basically, helping underrepresented leaders and marginalized leaders reach their next level of success through healing and authenticity. And prior to my work, I was in recruiting and talent acquisition, my corporate life, basically. But who am I really is I am a queer non-binary immigrant of Filipino heritage. And what I believe to be true is that in order for us to create a thriving and loving, inclusive world, we must start the work within. So again, thank you for having me.
Yes, I'm already like getting a clean page here with taking my notes. My pen is ready, fresh to just write down whatever knowledge you're going to drop today. Christine, thank you so much already for sharing a part of your journey. I know that as we roll into these awesome questions that folks have submitted previous to this chat, you will, share more of your story so that we can encourage people to be their authentic selves and to, as you were saying, dismantle this crazy system that didn't include us in the first place and just have the power and the respect to do that. So thank you so much, Christine. I would love for you to go over some of the principal themes for today's conversation.
Yes. So today I really want us to go deeper into finding the meaning of what it means to show up authentically as us, and how to embrace vulnerability to access authenticity, because without vulnerability, we're not able to tap into authenticity. And then what actionable steps to support you in showing up authentically at work, because I know that it has been a conversation. So I hope I hope to provide, some useful steps for it to be easier. It's always going to be challenging. Let me just put a disclaimer that it's always going to be challenging, but this work is worth it. It's worth all of you. So it's all of the things that I could cherish just for it to be easier for you to do that.
Beautiful. Awesome. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that we can dive right into the questions that folks have submitted previous to the chat. And everyone who's joining us live, if you hear me read your question and you're here with us live, we would love to know that you're here. So you can just let me know by dropping that in the chat box or just giving a thumbs up or something like that with your emoji icons if you feel called to do so. If you don't hear your question come up and something comes to mind, maybe you weren't able to submit a question before this conversation, we still want to hear from you. So like I said in the introduction, feel free to drop that in the chat box or hop off mute. I just want to shout out where folks are calling from before we go into the questions. So our guest speaker is calling from the Bronx and New York. As I said, I'm calling from Argentina and Patagonia. We've got San Diego on the line, North Carolina on the line, Washington, Buenos Aires. Great. So if you're just joining us, just write in the chat box, let us know where you are in the world, just so that we can have a reference and our guest speaker can also dive in deeper if she knows that maybe certain things are happening where you are in the world. So awesome. Chicago representing. Great. So keep the chat box on fire there. I will flag whatever you all bring up in the chat box. And Christine, let's start with this first question here. What is the difference between being our authentic selves and having a work self?
Well, having even the idea of the separation between the work self and the authentic self is already suppressive, because it's a mask. If we think that we have to have a work self, and what that means, like a persona, means that we're picking up a mask and suppressing our authentic self, right? So the difference, I always say the personal and the professional is never separate. In our heads, it's the systems already. Like our brains process that as systems, and it's the wiring of it and the behavior that's attached to what it means and the beliefs and the concepts and the theories and all that stuff. It's already there. We think we can separate it, but we can't. So the question now is, why would you even want to have a work self, to have that persona that doesn't allow for you to be free to express and move and be, really? So there is a difference. if you if you think about it, yes, there is a difference, but why would you want that?
Right. And I love that. I mean, I love that you're setting the stage, speaking about one of the themes that I am completely obsessed with these days, which is decolonizing the mind.
Mm-hmm.
So much comes into that. And so I feel like this has a place in that conversation. Why do I have to check myself at the door? Why are things off limits? Why are certain things taboos to speak
Yes.
about or to bring up? And how does that hinder us? And how does that hurt how does that have the trickle effect as producing things, as consuming things, and as
Yeah.
sharing that with our communities? So I really appreciate you setting the stage there.
But I also want to, so let's do the definition of authenticity, really, right? So etymology, authenticity from authentos, Latin or Greek. I think it's Greek. It means being the authority, right? It's like one acting on oneself's authority. And the authority is key here. So the question is, whose permission am I still valuing more than my permission? Whose authority am I still valuing more than my authority? Right? So that's really it. It's and then you look at congruence around it. Like being in integrity with yourself means being congruent and just like the wholeness and oneness of it and just showing up as that. And as I've said and mentioned earlier, our social system and standard is white, patriarchal, heteronormative. If if we continue, if just like sit there for a minute, not showing up as who we are contributes to the cyclical violence of this system. And that's harmful. And I want to let you know, or just to tell you, please love yourself enough to free yourself. And that's what it means.
I love this. And I'm just like, I'm echoing everything that you're saying. But let's throw in, what it seems like, what allows a lot of folks to forget this, this clear invitation that you're posing to us, the almighty dollar, when it comes down to that, that bottom line, or, the collecting information, data, that dollar. Why do you think that we allow ourselves to be lost in that, so that we can't fully be present? I mean, I would just love to hear you philosophize a little on that.
Yeah. Well, what does it mean? Dollar is really not just the access to things physically. It's value. It's how we are perceived in the society. It's status. It's it's like the embracing that ideology. It's being more, having more. Being more means having more. That has been like that's the capitalist system that we're in. But if you go into different cultures and communities, actually it's not the case. Indigenous tribes don't uphold that ideology. It really stems from Western civilization and of course capitalism. But we put so much value in money, and it actually becomes an identity for us. So we forget that. We forget who we are because we identify to the value of something else.
And just to piggyback on that, and then I'll go into the next question here. I really love the work that Yuval Noah Harari is sharing with the world. And if you all aren't familiar with him, definitely recommend picking up a book or two of his or looking at some of his live Q&As. He's a historian, queer historian from Israel. And first of all, I just love it because the perspective is not from the States on one sense. And then it also has a queer perspective. And so just because I identify as queer as well, I just love these, the B side of history, let's say, the stories that have not been shared, the influence that has been silenced for a long time, and that basically supports, masking our authenticity. Well, one thing that Yuval Noah Harari speaks about is that as Homo sapiens, the one thing we're great at doing is creating fiction. So we were just talking about the dollar. And so the economy is a fiction, like how we decide to value what, where power comes from, how we share power, and how we're using that kind of, as a monetary hold. And so one of my value systems is to just always encourage people that we need new stories, and we need new stories that come from empathy, that come from self-awareness, that come from more of this caring and sharing, this giving, and not just taking and exploiting. So I love that you're also highlighting that just in your responses. And I just wanted to encourage everyone to just think outside of the box, as Christina's saying, find out how to put value into ourselves instead of, something else that has been suppressive for so long. So thank you so much for that. Let's move on to this next question here. Again, if this is your question, let us know that you're here on the line with us. How can I be my authentic self when my authentic self is at odds with people's current perception of me?
How people perceive you is something that you cannot control. But how you influence that is your responsibility. How you show up as is your full responsibility. So how do we be congruent and in alignment is the question, right? So being, ask first, why is it that my authentic self is at odds with people who perceive me? What are the steps that I need to take to communicate who I am, to communicate and represent and show up as who I am fully and authentically? And there's a lot of unpacking to do, of course. There's a lot of communicating to do. Communication is 80% listening and 20% speaking. Just letting y'all know. So being in that conversation, even, listen to the feedback. What are they saying? Why are they saying it? What does it mean, right? So be in inquiry, be in that conversation, really be curious and interested as to why is it the way it is, because knowing where you are now will give you the information to support you in the future task or the steps that you need to take in the future towards your goals.
Beautifully said. So I think this is a great question to roll into. Let's consider that someone is, trying to present their authentic self, but for some reason there's some friction there from the other side. So this question reads, what if you don't get a positive response when you show or reveal more of who you are? What if the response appears to be stripping you of your power?
When I saw this, I actually love this question. So first of all, please do not expect that people are going to always, key is always receive you positively. Because again, showing up authentically as you is resistance to the system already, the system that's already in place. That means you will always find people who will resist that because they do not understand, because they've been so used to comfort and safety, and they probably get some benefits and reward being in this system. So that's not the goal that we're trying to do. That's not the goal, to receive positive feedback or responses, right? But how do you manage that? And this is the work of Mariella. This is also the work that I promote. It's like emotional intelligence. What does that mean? What is that work? What does that look like? Really build on that, because we all need that emotional intelligence so we can manage the emotions, manage our bodies, and release that the emotional barrier that's stopping us from achieving our goal. The goal is showing up authentically. The goal is dismantling the system. The goal is for you to live freely. and to liberate yourself and for you to thrive. That's the goal. And the concept of being stripped up of power is a myth, because when you know you have power already and you're empowered, no one can take that away from you unless they kill you, right? That's the only definition of being stripped up of power, when you no longer exist. Even being in prison is actually questionable, right? Because I was thinking about it, it's like, what are ways in which we don't actually can exercise power anymore? Of course, when we die, because we no longer exist, or we're imprisoned, right? Because we aren't physically able to freely contribute to society. But that's actually even questionable, because if you think about it, Nelson Mandela and Malcolm X being imprisoned and still doing things in prison with their power and influence, were they really stripped out of their power? No, absolutely not, right? And now let's just deconstruct the idea of white supremacy culture, because we think that our power lies in relationship to someone else or to something. That's having power over something. But that's not the case. That's not the case. Like that's the white supremacy culture is telling us that we have to be dominant, we have to monopolize, we have to be supreme, we have to be the greatest, we have to be the only one. Then that's contributing to the cyclical system that has been so violent towards you and your community. So let's release that concept of me and my power is dependent on something or in relationship to something, but know full well that I already have power and I'm empowered to do whatever I need to do.
Beautifully said. I want to roll into this next question that I think you started to develop in this response, but just to push you deeper there into reflecting on this here. This question reads, choosing authenticity over safety is scary because I fear I will be taken less seriously and seen as less trusted in my corporate culture. How do I rewrite that narrative?
It's you telling your story. So tell your story, have the courage to tell your story before someone else tell your story. So in this narrative of feeling in a corporate culture, not having trust, that's something that you cultivate with someone else. That's something that you cultivate with people. This is all about relationship management, cultivating that deeper relationship with each other. That's how you gain trust. Trust is just that's not just given out of nowhere. You show up for trust. You show up as trustworthy. You build that with people and with folks, right? I think there's something a lot to say about how we perceive things as an end all be all. When trust is gone, then that's the end of it. Absolutely not. We can regain trust. We can rebuild trust. We can inspire people, to change their perspective. And that's the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, really. It's that how do we cultivate and maintain trust among each other and within the culture? We will break trust. We're not perfect human beings. We're not, please release yourself from that harmful idea that you have to always be perfect. No, like I'm going to make a mistake. I'm going to falter. I'm going to hurt people because of my language unintentionally, right? But what is it that it's needed of me and from me to regain that trust, to rebuild that relationship, to be to create that safe space for other people again? And that's the resilience around this work.
And I love that you ended with speaking of creating safe spaces, especially now that a lot of folks have been, if they have the privilege, of course, if we have the privilege to work digitally with technology, then we are now asking to create safe spaces in this digital space, because my theory is that the digital space is being colonized because we don't have a lot of diverse folks creating technology. We don't have a lot of emotional intelligence. Even if there is diversity, maybe it's diverse people playing the same game that got us into this mess in the first place for, the security of XYZ. I mean, that's a whole another conversation. But I love that you highlighted the need for safe spaces. And I just, for this question of choosing authenticity over safety, there is a limit, right? If you are being hurt or harmed and it is physically unsafe or mentally unsafe, definitely not encouraging folks to stay in those situations. And Christine, I would love for you to highlight, how can one know if this is like, what is the difference between me opening up more in a healthy way, putting my boundaries while still being in a safe space versus, a clearly unsafe situation, whether it be in the digital world or in the physical world.
Yeah, when you're continuously being suppressed and repressed, honestly, that's it. When your voice is not being heard continuously, constantly, when you're not being seen as all you are constantly, when you're being gaslighted constantly, right? Because now gaslighting for me like really opens up to dissonance, and that's something that I please know, when you're gaslighted or gaslit, just remove yourself from that situation, because for me, it questions yourself all the time, and that continuous questioning will just will not allow for you to be congruent and in integrity with yourself. So if you're experiencing that continuously, that's not safe for you. That's it. Like, how do I plan outside or out of this situation?
Beautifully said. And I had an interview a couple of weeks ago just on this topic, gaslighting. I'll find the link and drop it in the chat so folks can rewatch that. I definitely recommend it. I think that we're not talking enough about this kind of thing, and as you were saying, it creates so much dissonance. I definitely encourage folks to rewatch that and take some notes, because it can be very uncomfortable to be put in those situations where it's like, okay, what do I stay silent or do I speak up? And if I speak up, is it a safe space for me to speak up? There's so much to consider, and we are not alone in this. Lots of things are percolating as we bring forth these truths, and let folks know that we're not okay with this anymore. So, thank you. Paloma dropped it in the chat box. There's the chat. Definitely recommend watching that. So we have a comment here. I was gaslit at my last role by my white male manager, and I thought I was the crazy one after hearing his quote explanations. Thank you for dropping that in the chat box. Christine, would you like to reflect on that comment?
Yeah, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And that those are the things that actually is very real. And we don't categorize this as intense or as that has high impact or effect, because we've been so used to it. We've been so used to the harm that the systems and the people around us have caused us, and we thought and think that is actually normal. Please heal from that trauma, so you can allow yourself to experience that you deserve something more.
Beautifully said. And this is actually a great bridge into this next question. What does the process look like for healing across an organization when individuals may be at different stages of healing?
That's actually it was a little confused. I think I needed more context around this, because when we say healing across organization, are we talking about the whole organization promoting healing with each other, right? And what does that mean to accept and embrace people's level of healing in their journey? But to answer it, if so let's just do the scenario, I guess. If the organization is promoting healing across the board, right? That means that there's a commitment that this is what we're going to do for each other. That means you also doing the work for yourself and being present with that process and what it looks like. Because healing within, getting present with all the process and the ways in which you are healing allows you to get present with patience and compassion and kindness, what's required, right? Then that's what you are going to transfer to how you perceive and receive other people's journey. When you can give that to yourself, what you give to you give to others. And I think I've said it's like this to a lot of posts, like, you cannot give what you do not have, so please give to you first.
Yes. It's like the what happens in the airplane. Make sure that you get oxygen first so that you can take care of if you have a kid or someone else who needs your assistance, because if you can't breathe, you can't help someone else breathe, essentially. And I love that as just a reminder for this exact situation. We cannot help other folks heal if we are not taking one step in our personal journey. And I just want to remind folks, I love that Christine started this conversation off by saying, separating the personal from the professional is pretty absurd. And so we have to bring things like patience and active listening and compassion into the workplace, because if we don't, we are basically slicing ourselves in half and giving half of ourselves or not feeling fulfilled. And that leads to so many other, things that can just jeopardize our livelihood. So I love that you set the stage there, reminding us that, the personal and professional are one and the same, essentially. All right, let's move on to this next question here. I've done my best to fit in personally and professionally to a point where I've lost myself, and it's been hard to even know what feels or is authentic to me. How can I explore what is authentic to me? How can I explore authenticity as I'm trying to get back to the working world?
Well, I would really like for you to seek for help. That's really the thing, because we won't be able to see the unconscious, what we do not know, that, right? It's who's I forgot the name of this psychologist. There are 4 quadrants, right? What we know, what we don't know, what we thought we know, well, we didn't know that we didn't know, and then there's another one, right? So it's that what we didn't know that we didn't know would allow for us to get that back into the conscious level with another person. And that's what therapists actually do, or coaches or mentors, or other you can do therapy or alternative therapy. You can do the Western therapy or the alternative therapy. Whichever one is, like, you seek for help, because it's it's very challenging to do that on your own, because there's a lot of grieving here. There's so much pain to be so present with the identities that we hold that actually have not served us for a very long time. In shedding that identity, you have to grieve that. For the non-binary or the trans community, actually, they do um, they do some ritual or ceremony to actually mourn their old self, right? That's something that we also do. And as a, that it's not only that's a physical kind of ceremony, but emotionally and mentally, we actually grieve these things too. we grieve this part of us that have been harmful, that are no longer part of us. As we evolve, this is painful. So I want you to seek for help, have that support system, and continue to be in inquiry. Self-inquiry is key, and in authenticity.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan in seeking therapy, alternative therapy, dance therapy, sound therapy, writing, being out in nature. I mean, this is one of the reasons I've moved to Patagonia, just to be involved in nature more. And so what does it mean when I decide to contemplate more versus thinking I need to be productive in this Western thought of what does being productive mean? Well, for me, being productive is to have time to contemplate so that I can have that moment of pause and reflection, and that helps me bring myself, in a more authentic way to whatever I'm doing. So this goes back to what you were saying before about dismantling these constructs that we were born into, essentially, especially if we are of the Western world, or lots of places in the global North, that we have a lot of access to brainwashing. I would say, I have a radio that I'm starting on the Positive Force team that is called Brainwashing, and what we do is we dissect some of these ideas on, okay, what were we taught in school and why? What about the B side of history? What about the stories that were shared that definitely have an influence on our lives and the way that we perceive and the way that we use, let's say, technology or construct technology? Are we doing that from a more colonized side of thinking, or are we dismantling that and being our authentic selves to see what beauty can come up? So I love this. We also have another comment here in the chat box that I'm going to raise. Crystal writes, I was also gaslit by my supervisor, who was a white male. I feel like he also turned my colleagues against me. This supervisor is no longer with the company, but the separation that I feel from the team is still lingering. How do I work to overcome this? It's pretty clear that my team doesn't trust me, and I need for them to trust me to be able to work together effectively. Thank you so much for dropping that in the chat box. Christine, what would you like to reflect on here?
Yeah, this is, again, relationship management. And it's so sad that other people's perception of us has more weight than who we tell them to be. Unfortunately, that's the case, as we know, right? Like, white folks have more value when it comes to influence, or have more influence and value when it comes to how they perceive or their opinions and stuff. But now, you can ask, how can I be responsible around these relationships that I have, and what are ways in which I can be in there with them? There are different ways. Is it a challenging conversation that you want to have? Do you need to clear with these folks, right? So the communication, again, what does that mean? What does that look like? When we're rebuilding relationship, it's the same with our partners. I mean, I'm single, but it's the same within that relationship, and saying that, hey, I want a different future for us, or this is the goal. How do we be in that conversation together? What does that mean for the two of us? What can we agree with? Right? And then create that commitment, and then show up for that commitment continuously. And then, show up for those folks. Also, create boundaries. If this is something that you want, it means, if this is something that's still lingering, it means that you're incomplete with that. Your heart is saying that there's something more that I want from this moment, or from these people, or from these relationships. Acknowledge yourself for it. Get responsible, and do whatever it is that's needed for you to just recreate this relationship. But also there's discernment around this, because is it because that you were taken from, or is it because you want to build a relationship? Because those are two different things and two different process. healing if you feel heal from it if you feel like you were taken from. There's trauma around it. There's trauma that happened that you want to really process. And then also see if you do I still want to be in relationships with these people? You know, if that the answer is yes, then do the work.
Absolutely. All right. Awesome points. They right. Thank you, Christine. Beautiful. All right. So we've got about 15 minutes left, a little over 15 minutes left, everyone. So just want to remind folks, we would love to hear from you. You can write in the chat box. Let us know if you have any reflections or questions, or you can hop off mute. And actually, I'll practice some emotional intelligence right now. I'll hold for a light pause to see if someone needs that space to hop off mute and voice a question or reflection. So if you want to hop off mute, please use this opportunity. If not, I have more questions. So no worries if no one wants to now. All right, you still have some time. So we'll roll into this next question here that was submitted previous to the chat here. How do you feel comfortable not code switching? And I'd love for you to define code switching for folks who aren't familiar with the terminology and of the practice of code switching.
So code switching is a tool to really suppress a part of who we are, so we can assimilate or conform to what we perceive to be the standard of the social standard. How do I be comfortable with code switching? The answer is not code switching. The answer is I don't give a shit. I'm sorry, but that's really it. So let me unpack this. I got present with how harmful it is for me to code switch. You know, I was just having a reflection, of course, in my journal saying, oh my God, I honestly feel smarter today. I feel that I can express myself so much more, that I can retain knowledge so much more, that I can be with people without thinking that I have to be a certain way. It was so liberating. And I was like, wow, how many of those moments have been stolen from me? Because I'm holding this energy in my head. And really, for me, because I got present with how painful it is and how harmful it is and what it's being taken from me, I don't want that anymore. I love myself enough to say, you are enough. You deserve. You are loved. You are lovable. You are worthy, you know? So how do I feel comfortable? I just am. I guess I just am.
And you mentioned journaling. I am a huge fan of journaling. And I know that, especially in, let's say, I mean, I can speak from my experience. You know, I remember having a teacher in high school that decided to not use red pen to mark incorrect, you know, grammar or whatever in English class. And I mean, that moment has stuck with me for all of my life, because this teacher was conscious about like the pressure that it can then, the lasting impression that can happen with like you being called to write or not. Maybe you don't even want to, you know, maybe this is a sign that I shouldn't be writing if I'm getting all this red on the paper. So they changed the color of the pen. And just from that moment, I just was like, that is a professional making a decision to have an impactful, liberating experience in the classroom that I have taken in my personal life elsewhere. But what I want to say is a lot of people don't write. Maybe it stems from something like that. They were influenced through, you know, school, or for other reasons. We have a lot of, you know, access to, those of us who do have access to digital devices, and that, you know, maybe we want to type more. But I am a huge fan of picking up a piece of paper and a fast pen so that I can just dump and just free up some space in my mind, and also have that reflection piece, right? So you're saying that it's easy for you to be confident in yourself, knowing that you are worthy, knowing that you are lovable. And I would also say that helping to journal allows at least me to remember that about myself. Or if I'm not aware of it because I've had a bad day or a bad week, just writing to reflect and to just dump and reviewing that a little later helps me remember that and recognize that within myself. So I extend that as well as a tool for people to use as they are, growing into their authenticity. Christine, I see you nodding your head. Did you want to chime in there?
No, you're absolutely right. It's really that. It's you're downloading what's in your head so it doesn't stay in your head anymore. And you can actually feel the release. So a lot of the work that I do is like there's somatic around it because we're present with how it feels in our body. When we're present in how it feels in our body, there's actually more of like embedding the learning or the experience. So whenever I write down something, especially if I couldn't even sleep, it's like, okay, let me just write about this. And then it releases automatically. I try it, be present, try it tonight. Be present at how your body and your brain, or just like the experience in your body, how it feels. And then let me know if it actually gives you that ease, that release.
And it can be uncomfortable, like you said in the beginning as well, taking a step along this path of remembering our authenticity to show that and develop that within ourselves and then bring that to work. It can be challenging because it can be uncomfortable sometimes. It has not been the quote norm. And so when we bring that part of ourselves, we might get some backlash. And we might not get positive feedback, which we're told we need positive feedback. So I just encourage folks, if they feel uncomfortable when they start to write, don't worry, it's a good sign.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to this next question here. We've got about 10 minutes left, everyone. So if you would like to write a question or a reflection, feel free to do so by dropping that in the chat box or hopping off of mute here. Until then, I'll go into this next question here. So it reads, it seems like every day is Halloween when I go to work. I have to wear a different mask every day just to survive in my company and the industry. Have you experienced these personal struggles? And did you adapt or leave to find a better fit?
When I read this, I actually cried. Not cry, I almost tear, because I could feel the pain as this person wrote this question. Like, every day is like Halloween. That means that every day you're scared. Every day you experience horror just by not being who you are. And that's so, so painful. And it reminds me of how it was for me as as I basically allowed my authority to be trampled by someone else's by not being authentic. And did I leave? Did I choose to stay? I also just want to acknowledge you for being present with this. Please do the work that you have to do to reclaim your power so you can show up authentically as you. Do whatever it takes that you have to do to cultivate belonging, self-belonging. I talk about self-belonging a lot. I teach this as well. Cultivate that self-belonging so you know that you belong to you, so you don't have to seek belonging outside of you. You belong to you first. And did I stay? Did I leave? I left. I left the industry completely and actually changed my changed what I wanted to do. I also got present with the time that I was wasting doing something that I didn't love or wasn't aligned with who I am. And I wanted to be fully self-expressed. And choosing that for me looked like being in another space. So I did leave, but there's an opportunity for you to just stay. If there's an opportunity for you to stay and be accepted and loved and develop and thrive in the space that you're in by showing up as you, please, that's also okay. That's the choice that you have to make. That's a personal choice. So get clear. Get the clarity that you need, because clarity is kindness.
And that is that's beautifully said, because it builds another bridge to what you're saying, with just the importance of that self-awareness piece, which is a part of emotional intelligence. So we can't get clarity if we're not taking time to listen to ourselves, right? So you were mentioning also practicing active listening to the other, but again, to reinforce what you're saying, practice active listening to yourself. And what does that look like? Well, you can sit and speak to yourself out loud, make sure no one's around so you don't feel like people are judging you, but speak out loud. I laugh out loud, scream out loud. I don't think we do that enough. Journal, dance, move your body, feel your body, connect the mind with the body. Where, I mean, I feel it all the time when I finish these conversations, because it's very, we're in a square and we have to figure out how to express ourselves in this small screen. And I find that it's like a lot of mental head talk, and just like, I get up immediately and I put a song on for 3 minutes and I dance. I'm trying to build that into my practice, just because otherwise it keeps me in this heady place. And I find that just makes a lot of my other energy stagnant. And then that represses some of my authentic self, like, it's a lot of work. I've been doing this work for a while. But yes, I love that you're reflecting on that. So thank you so much. I would love to touch on this question here. We've got about 5 minutes left, so let's see. Of course, go as deep as you can, but this is also a very chewy thing to bring up. So let's see what you want to share with us here. What if I don't want to talk about my family, religion, culture, or politics at work?
Then don't. Then don't. I mean, it's not the content of what you're talking about, it's the who. Who is it? Who is talking? Who is communicating? Who is relating to people, right? The essence of you as a human being doesn't lie in the content that you say and what you say per se. It lies in who you are, right? So if you don't want to talk about culture, religion, then that's in alignment to you. Listen to that, right? But are you in inquiry as to why? Are you going into the deeper context of why it is that that's the case? Because as for me, I can talk about anything and everything. It's like, it's just because it's just part of life. It's part of my faculties as a human being, right? As a spirit having human experiences. For me, right, it's like, well, these human experiences include politics, includes culture, includes family, include all these things. Why would I not want to talk about it in some capacity? But again, that's the self-awareness and having to ask yourself, why is it the way that I feel around this? Where is the discomfort coming from? So but be in alignment with yourself. If you don't want to talk about it, then don't focus on the content. Really focus on the who. Focus on who you are.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Christine. This has been so encouraging. And I know that we've had some chatter in the chat box. So I appreciate folks raising their questions and reflections here. Let's see if we have time for this last question that was in the chat box here just now. So let's see. I recall posting okay, here it goes. When you speak about authenticity, is that what you mean? Wait, I recall posting a pre-question about working with white executives. When you speak about authenticity, is that what you mean? Be your authentic self by doing the work so I can be confident when working with the C-suite.
I think it really doesn't matter who you're talking or working with, honestly. Again, we put so much value in title. We put so much value in who has more authority, and you feeling that you do not actually have power or authority in this capacity, right? So it really does not matter to me and how you can navigate through that. I mean, sorry, excuse me. It doesn't matter who you're talking to or who is you're in relationship with. Authenticity can live in every aspect of your life in every relationship that you have. I think what I hear you're saying is that how do I show up as my authentic self in dealing with executives? I mean, that's another process, right? So when it comes to executive, I have this process. First of all, get clear. Get clear as to who you are, what your commitments are, what your goals are, right? That's the goal. Be very clear. Get the clarity for yourself, get the clarity for the other person, get the clarity for who you are, and get the clarity as well. Gives them clarity that they need. Data. Get data. What data can support you in showing up as your authentic self in these systems? It could be knowing that there will not be any retaliation, right? It's like, what are systems and policies in place that would support me around this, that could, have my back? So the what and the who has my back? Who are the people that I can trust and be in community with to make sure that I have that support system in that community around this? So, and gather information, like information as to what the goal is with you being in relationship with this C-suite. What does that mean in context? And then emotional intelligence is definitely key. We've been talking about emotional intelligence, having the awareness um, of who you are in relationship with other people is very important. How do you manage yourself in these conversations? And I don't like the word manage. It's like responsible is the thing for me. How do you be self-responsible um, around your emotional response, your trauma? Because you don't talk about that a lot. You are going to be in conversation knowing that you have experienced a lot of these things, right? The trigger, what are my triggers? And then the same thing too in relationship with other people. You want to be aware as to what are their trauma responses. Do they have one? Can I be, can I and how, or not even trauma response, how their emotional response, what does that mean? Do they speak loudly or do they scream all at the same time, or do they speak softly? What does that mean, right? That's, what is their emotional response in conversations? And then the last one is like really just speaking in integrity with yourself or communicating in integrity. So hope that helps, hope that supports you.
I love that you have taken the time to just really share your personal experience, how you work, within this space of, encouraging people how to be authentic in the workplace, especially because, well, we can't separate the professional from the personal, as we talked about earlier. Christine, if people want to reach out to you and continue to engage in conversation with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I'm very active in LinkedIn. I definitely respond better on LinkedIn. You can DM me and ask for support. I know that we didn't get through a lot of these questions. If you want to just ask me, I'm happy to answer any questions that you all have. And for the person who said about the Halloween, please DM me because I have something for you. But yes, LinkedIn is best. I'm also on Instagram, but not as active. But you can email me at christinec@consciousdrive.com. Visit our website, www.consciousdrive.com. If you all, if you're looking for a learning and training and workshops, we have programs specifically for marginalized employees and folks to support them in their personal and professional development. So yes,
Beautiful. Thank you so much. Folks are singing your praises here in the chat box, saying that this was an awesome conversation. Thank you so much. Thank you for providing this healing space today, much needed. I echo those sentiments. So thank you so much, Christine. I will definitely be connecting with you when we finish this conversation. And I encourage our folks who are listening now to connect with Christine. Enjoy the rest of your day. Remember that we have the power within to be our authentic selves. And you have folks like us who support that. So keep doing your thing. We believe in you. We'll see
Yes.
you on the next Chat and Learn, everyone. Bye.
Bye.